It was one of those Los Angeles afternoons when the city seemed to hold its breath. Warm sunlight brushing over bustling streets and a quiet hum in the air. Outside a modest cafe on Melrose Avenue, the scene was set like a snapshot from a classic film. At one outdoor table sat Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood icon known for his steely gaze and an aura blending toughness and tenderness. Though time had etched lines on his face, his reputation remained unyielding, drawing furtive glances from passers-by unsure if they should disturb his solitude. Across the busy street, amid the mosaic of everyday life, stood a figure largely ignored by the crowd. This was Kevin, a man whose worn clothing told a tale of hardship and survival. His disheveled hair and weather-beaten face painted the picture of someone who had seen the darker side of life. Clutching a small, battered cardboard sign, Kevin's other hand fumbled nervously as he scanned the cafe. For weeks, he had sought shelter behind a convenience store dumpster. Today marked another day of longing and quiet desperation. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in over 48 hours, and his stomach gnawed at him with a relentless reminder of his struggles. Summoning every ounce of courage, Kevin's eyes found Clint Eastwood, the embodiment of Hollywood legend and perhaps hope. With hesitant steps echoing the weight of his burdens, Kevin crossed the street. His voice was barely a whisper as he reached the table and asked, "Sir, could you spare $1?" Clint slowly removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that had witnessed countless stories. For a long, silent moment, he simply studied Kevin, not with pity, but with a quiet curiosity that invited the man to share his narrative. Kevin's heart pounded as he braced to apologize and retreat. But then, in a tone carrying both warmth and quiet command, Clint said, $1, huh? Sit down, let's talk." At that invitation, Kevin's trembling steps brought him to the chair opposite Clint. He set his cardboard sign on the table with tentative care, as if the fragile paper could shatter under the weight of his story. Under Clint's unwavering yet kind scrutiny, the words Kevin had long kept buried began to spill forth. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you," he began haltingly, his voice raw with vulnerability. "I don't usually ask for help, but I haven't had a proper meal in days. I've been trying to find work. It's just, everything's harder than I thought." Kevin's eyes dropped to his calloused hands as he recalled days of backbreaking work as a contractor, steady employment once enjoyed, and the cruel twist of fate that left him with mounting bills and an empty fridge. "The recession hit hard," he continued, voice thick with regret. "One day there was work and hope, the next late notices and despair. I spent my life building homes for others, and now I can barely keep a roof over my head." Clint listened without interruption, his expression a mixture of empathy and contemplation. The silence between them was heavy with understanding, a pause in which both men weighed their past and future. Sensing Kevin's attempt to shift the focus from his pain, Clint leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table, and asked, "What's your name?" Caught off guard, Kevin stuttered, Kevin," as if testing the sound of his own identity. Clint nodded slowly, letting the names settle into the conversation. Then, in a tone resonant with years of experience on and off screen, Clint said, "I've played many roles, cowboys, soldiers, detectives, and every character, good, bad, or ugly, carried a story. But what matters isn't where you've been. It's what you choose to do next. So tell me, Kevin, what's the next chapter in your story?" The question hung in the air, its simplicity belying its challenge. Kevin hesitated, his eyes searching for an answer he wasn't sure he possessed. "The next chapter?" he echoed, voice laced with disbelief. "Honestly, I don't know. I just wake up every day hoping to make it through." Clint's eyes narrowed slightly, not in judgment, but in the weight of his own memories. "That's not a chapter, Kevin. That's just a sentence. Life is more than fleeting survival. You have to decide to write a real chapter, one where you can rebuild and seize a new opportunity." The conversation took on a meditative pace as Kevin struggled with the enormity of his situation and the idea of change. The quiet hum of the street faded into the background as Clint continued, "I'm not here to pretend I have all the answers. But even in the darkest times, there's a spark inside you worth fighting for. Reaching into his pocket, Clint produced a neatly folded business card and slid it across the table. This is a shelter run by a friend. They can help you get back on your feet. It isn't a magic fix, but it might be the first step toward writing that new chapter. Kevin stared at the card as if it were a fragile lifeline, a promise of help and hope he scarcely believed he deserved. Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. Clint's eyes softened as he replied, "Someone once reached out to me when I was at my lowest, and that small act of kindness changed everything. I'd be lost without that chance." For a long, silent minute, Kevin's mind raced through memories of cold nights against harsh concrete and days filled with whispered rejections. Doubt and fear warred with a budding hope. "I've been to shelters before," he confessed, shaking his head. "They never really helped. It always feels like you're just another number." Clint leaned in once more, his voice steady and certain. "I know what it's like to feel forgotten, Kevin, but you're more than your circumstances. Every scar and hardship is part of your story. It doesn't have to be the ending." After a charged silence, Kevin whispered, I'll think about it." Clint nodded and added quietly as Kevin rose, "Take care of yourself, Kevin." As Kevin walked away, the street took on a new hue, a blend of uncertainty and possibility. With the card in hand, he passed reflective shop windows showing a tired, weathered figure that also hinted at a man on the brink of change. Outside a laundromat, he paused to wash his stained clothes, a silent vow to face a new day with dignity and hope. Back at the café, Clint sat for a long moment, staring at the empty chair where Kevin had been. As he sipped his coffee, memories from his own past surged forth. Days of relentless struggle during the Depression, nights when a can of beans was all his family shared, and the compassionate strangers who had once extended a helping hand. He recalled a mechanic who had seen potential in a scrappy kid like him, offering his first job without expectation. That small gesture paved the way for a lifetime of opportunities, and Clint knew that sometimes the greatest changes began with a single act of kindness. Later that evening, in his modest office, Clint reflected on the day's encounter. He opened a drawer of mementos, letters, photographs, and old ticket stubs reminding him of where he'd come from. Kevin's story stirred something deep within him, reaffirming his belief that compassion can light even the darkest paths. For Clint, helping Kevin wasn't about grand gestures or recognition. It was about paying forward the kindness that had once rescued him. Weeks passed. With help from the shelter, Kevin began piecing his life together. A modest job at a local warehouse, a stable roof, and a chance to reclaim his self-worth. Every small victory, a clean shirt, a warm meal, a steady paycheck, became a stepping stone toward a brighter future. In time, Kevin transformed from a man burdened by hardship into someone who shared his journey with others in need. His story, once marred by despair, now resonated with hope and resilience. Meanwhile, Clint continued his quiet life, ever aware that behind every passing face on Melrose Avenue lay a story waiting to be heard. The memory of that afternoon, the unexpected meeting between two very different men, remained etched in his mind, a reminder that sometimes the simplest interactions spark the greatest transformations. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every small act of kindness has the power to change a life. Together, we can help write new chapters for those who need it most.